It's the things that cause us the most grief that actually elevate us to places that we never imagined we'd be. We don't want to go through any grief-related event that we've dealt with. But the reality is, grief is tantamount to growth. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. Another episode of the Grief Empowerment Theory live stream. I have an incredible guest today. This young lady, she actually is an art professor, but she uses art as self-help therapy. And especially when it comes to grieving, when it comes to having challenging situations, we always look for an avenue. Miss Karen Deloche is an expert at this. And please, Karen, take a quick moment and just kind of explain what it is that you do, your background, things of that nature.
Well, thank you so much. It is truly a privilege to be here, and it's a fabulous topic that you're addressing, and hopefully some of the things that I can say to your audience today can really encourage and give them hope in ways that they can really get the healing that they need. I'm an artist first and foremost, actor, filmmaker, writer. I teach college in a small community college using textbooks that I wrote for them in particular. I love the arts, have always taught all different ages. And it's only been in the last few years moving my message to online have I really learned the science behind what I was observing for my own life and for my students in the healing, miraculous healing power of the arts, and not just painting and drawing. My husband and sons are musicians. We have a very artsy family. We're writers. There's so many ways to be creative. My husband's a master gardener. That's another way to be creative. And as I realized that that art is for everyone in some way, because we've got half our brain devoted to creativity. And even Albert Einstein said that creativity is intelligence having fun. you
Yes.
know and when you're in a sad, grieving place, that's something that's very missing, is joy and remembering how to have fun again. And these are ways that can connect our left brain, right brain to make us more brilliant, less in brain fog, less depression, serotonin, the happiness chemical is released, all kinds of exciting things, just trying to be in those creative moments.
Karen, what's incredible about that is nobody wants to, unless you are striving to be artists. People don't believe that they are artistic. We talked about this backstage. I again, I'm I use Canva, but what was interesting was I'm not the guy. I am the stick figure draw guy, you know. But once I discovered Canva, it was a new way of me being able. And there are so many other ways for people to under. What's interesting is even sports is a way of art therapy, because there are some people that just want to get better and better and better at their particular sport. And then, it becomes an art because other people are observing it. You know, all these different thought process. But I wanted to find out, you have been able to walk with people who have had some severe disabilities physically, which
Yeah,
causes obviously a lot of grief. But
yeah,
talk about the young gentleman and then talk about the young lady that had stage 4 cancer.
yeah.
Talk about both of them, please.
Yeah, these are incidents of me finding just empirically, through experience, how art heals. Now, you're talking about sports because in my book How to Draw, which is on Amazon, the very first exercise is throwing and catching a ball, because to be able to draw, to be able to paint, you use your eyes and your hands together. It's eye-hand coordination, and as long as your eyes are working and you're looking at something, you can draw it. I can teach anybody to draw. My exercises are 100% successful. People improve their techniques and can learn if they want to. That's it. You just, like you said, you practice and practice what you love, and if you want to learn, you can. I'm saying that to everybody. But, talking about, David, he was a young man who was very challenged because he had some disabilities mentally. He had ADHD for one, and dyslexia. His mom was homeschooling him, and she had her master's in special education and wasn't able to reach him. And he was very depressed when she brought him to my studio and I started teaching him. Well, he took it to art like a duck to water. He learned to draw, learned to paint, learned to sculpt. I was entering his work along with other students into youth art competitions, and he was winning ribbons right and left. Well, it changed his life emotionally. He got the encouragement and the confidence he needed to really attack the academics, because his mom was really good at finding ways to work around his disabilities, and he did, and he was able to graduate from high school. Well, we all consider that a huge victory for him. And then, unfortunately, he had a traumatic brain injury. He got an infection that caused a stroke. So here he was, just coming off the high of graduating. He also had won Best in Show in a huge youth art competition, and now he's paralyzed on the right side of his body. Well, you can imagine how he felt. Matter of fact, they weren't sure. It was touch and go whether he'd survive. They had to replace his skull with plastic. So 4 months later, when after everything they could do in the hospital, he still couldn't talk, and he was dragging the right side of his body with a walker, trying to walk, but pulling it, it wasn't working very well. And his right hand was starting to try to curl into a ball. And his mom brought him right back to my studio. And I said, "Well, your left hand works, so let's try that." And at this time, I didn't understand anything about left brain, right brain. I didn't even know the science behind this. I just said, "Well, let's try it." And of course, he did really, really well. Matter of fact, he did so well, his neurosurgeon called me. He said, "What are you doing with David? I've never called anybody's art teacher before, but he is getting strength on his right side, and he is stronger with his weak hand than I am, and I'm a surgeon." Well, I was astounded. I'm like, "I don't know. I'm just teaching him to draw left-handed." He said, "Well, don't stop because it's working." Well, sure enough, this young man, if you looked at him today, you would not know he's got a plastic skull and that he couldn't talk at one time. He can talk. There's a part of his brain. I've learned more about the plasticity of the brain and how one part gets damaged, another part will fill in for it and kind of substitute for it. And so he can talk. Sometimes he responds slowly, but he's very articulate, and his sense of humor is intact. He's got a great dry sense of humor, and he is not in depression. He's living a good life. He can walk, he can talk, and nobody would look at him and say what he'd been through. Now, his family that I'm close to is convinced, along with his neurosurgeon, that art had a huge place in his healing process. So I started studying. I'm like, what is going on here? This is exciting. And finding out about left brain, right brain. We have scientists say that 98% of 5 and 6-year-olds are creative geniuses, but
Wow.
only 2% of adults. So what happens in that period of time? And I'll be honest, our Western education is part of the problem. Now, it's good at developing our left brain. It's good at memorization and order and, critical thinking and logic and those kinds of timeliness, those kinds of things that are very important and help people get jobs. It can also be tested. That's what they test in the SATs. It's all left brain skills that we tend to trivialize. And if budgets get cut, it's art classes and music classes and drama classes that get cut because they're trivializing that half of our brain. Now, I'm talking about half our brain here. And this is something that all of us have. Somebody like David, even he could compensate for the incredible injury that he had. So none of us really have an excuse because there's so many ways to be creative. And that's something I share in my art, a self-therapy wellness through creativity pop-up podcast that your audience is welcome to explore through getcreativewithkaren.com. Anyway, it has a list of more ideas on how to be creative besides painting and drawing if you're not interested in that. But I ask my students, "What did you love when you were 5? What did you love to do?" So answer that for me. What did you love to do when you were 5 and 6?
Yeah. What is crazy? I used to be able to flip around all over the place. Like I could backflip, I could do all these crazy things. I did it up until I was probably about 16, actually. But that's all I loved to do. Not all I loved to do, but that was a big part. Uh, When I figured out I knew how to do it, it was incredible. But it's very interesting that you're talking about, first off, um, the genius level that young people have. We were talking, and then you said as you get older, it kind of depletes.
Mhm.
But that's because, and I clearly understand what you're saying, that our Western society of academic study focuses more on things we can remember, things that we can quantify, versus the things that
Mhm.
we know are can attribute to making our worlds better. Because we're starting to see it now. Think about this. Even when you do a presentation, if it's not colorful, if it's not, if it is not eye catching,
Mhm.
I mean, it's like who wants to see a, you know, who wants to see a slideshow that doesn't have really cool slides? You don't want to have just words all over it. But again, it's interesting because we still don't want to give credit where credit's due. And like you said, whenever there are budget cuts, first thing that always goes are the arts, music, you know,
Theater. Yeah. Mhm. It's
and
true.
and then it's what's interesting, and then we turn around and, like you said, children like the young man that you're working with, you know, if he was to go into a traditional school setting, it would be like he would be looked at differently, and then it would almost be like the experts would say he's not teachable, when in reality it's just the fact that they may not understand how to teach him.
Yeah. Absolutely right. And, that's the thing that's sad, and, fortunately, his parents were in a position where they could take him home and make sure that he got the attention that he needed and got what he needed, and, I didn't know the power of it then. I just loved it. I'm an artist myself, and I love theater too. I've always been involved in theater. My children are all actors and filmmaking. I have a group of film students in Uganda. I got to go to Uganda on a missions trip a couple of years ago, and the pastor that has been rescuing these children from literally the streets, he raises them up in this church, has wanted to do a film school. So I was over there teaching them art and storytelling, and let me tell you, they have stories you wouldn't want for anybody you love to go through. When we hear these young people, what they have overcome, you look at your life and say, "You know what? Buck up, Karen." Because
Right.
people have been through much harder things, and I'm not trying to trivialize anyone's pain. Please don't hear that in my statement. But listening to these young people, I'm like, people need to hear your stories, and they have overcome so much. So they got internet usually, not always, but at the church, and we do film school. And we last year we did our first film, and right now we finished shooting, and we're doing the editing part part of our second film, and they are doing these stories. We write the stories together at week by week, and it has been one of the pleasures of my life to do that, to see them just come alive. So some, I got them last session we had. I said, so tell me about how you feel about the shoots. And so you have children, a young person. Most of them are in their teens or a little bit older, and they're like, I never thought I was worth anything, but I had so much fun acting in these scenes that I thought I can do stuff. I can do something. I'm not worthless. And I mean, I had tears in my eyes as one child after another talked about, doing lighting and how hard it was to hold the boom pole. Because we've been able to, me and my friends, to raise money for equipment for them and help
Okay.
them. And the other thing is feeding them on set. So first time they went and shot a movie and didn't have any food all day, I was shocked because I've been on movie sets and I trust me, they feed you. There's snacks and
Okay.
food all the time. Even if you're an extra and don't get paid great, you're going to get fed well. So I was horrified. I'm like, no, I'm going to make sure every shoot you have food. And when they were ready to do their big final scene, they needed a bunch of extras, and that's what Jonah said, is that as long as we feed them, people will come.
So, but
That is a great word. But the point is, they are exercising their personal gifts in a way to give them hope and courage and encouragement and confidence in ways that they didn't know they were even lacking till they experienced it.
well, Karen, it's again art. Art is one of those things that a lot of people don't want to believe that it can open up incredible worlds. It's interesting. I was doing a little bit of research, and this kind of folds right into your point. I was reading for the International Arts and Mind Lab. Now, this particular program works in conjunction with John Hopkins Medical Center and the Peterson Brain Science Institute. And what they were talking about, I was reading one of these quotes, and it kind of came out to me because one, it actually folds right into what you were saying. But what the quote was saying is that engaging in creative activity during any kind of bereavement may improve mindful attention. And it says this has been found to improve capacity to regulate our moods and boosting all those important connections between the amygdala and the prefrontal cortex. Basically, what this quote seems to be saying is exactly what you were talking about in a real life scenario, given these young people in Uganda who have been through incredible things. I mean, this war torn country, and they're learning how to use art to express themselves in a place and time that, again, it it doesn't relish art the way it should. But when you do these type of things with these children, with these people, they are exposed to a whole new world.
It's a joy when you see that. Just for you jumping into Canva, not feeling like you could draw, and then finding a way to use the tools to express yourself is brilliant. And that's exactly what I'm talking about. Using left brain, right brain is not hard, but it takes purposefulness. You have to engage in it purposefully because it's lacking, and it's only lacking, like I said, it's not your fault. It's because of the culture, it's because of jobs, because of our school systems. We're usually very strong left brain and not so strong in our right brain, but it can catch up. So this is the goal. You're never going to use your right brain without your left brain. The goal is all these neural connections, because the more neural connections between left brain, right brain, the more brilliant and out of the box problem solving you can do. So here's a study. This one's really fun. So I'm reading all these neuroscientists, and they studied people who sing in the shower. Now, I don't tend to sing in the shower as much as sing in the car when I'm all by myself, but I do, I sing. But a lot of people sing that you sing in the shower. Do you like to sing?
All the time.
Well, let me tell you what happens according to these scientists. So there you are, rub-a-dub-dub, scrubbing in the tub, right? You're not, minding your own business, doing your thing, and you're singing your favorite songs. You're singing along. For me, it would be worship songs, just having a blast, not realizing that you are building these brand new, like new spider web connections in your brain that help you solve problems. So you're not thinking about anything. You're resting your logic and your criticism, critical thinking. You're drying off, and you've been releasing serotonin, the happiness chemical. You feel good, you feel warm and clean, right? And all of a sudden an idea pops in your brain. Maybe it's the title of your next chapter in your book, or a problem at work that you hadn't thought of, a new way of going about it, or maybe some way to solve a relationship issue that you didn't know how to address. But these ideas come to you when you're engaging in left brain, right brain activity. Okay, it can be as simple as taking a stroll. Now, I'm not talking about a Fitbit walk that's fast and using aerobics and counting steps, although that's good. I'm not saying it's not. I'm talking about a stroll, maybe with a loved one or a pet. And you're just noticing the clouds, you're noticing the leaves in the trees, maybe something's flowering, you're smelling the breeze, the flowers, you're noticing the weather, you're noticing the crunch of leaves perhaps, or the sound of birds twittering, or for us, lots of cicadas and bullfrogs because we've had so much rain. But you're noticing your surroundings. And just in the act of walking easily, noticing your surroundings, you're engaging in left brain, right brain activity. It helps overcome brain fog. It helps, they're saying, with things like Parkinson's, even dementia issues can be helped. So, I encourage all your listeners, take a walk, take a stroll. Don't feel bad because your heart rate isn't pounding because you're not going as fast as you possibly can. You're relaxing. And as you do that, you're problem solving. Bring a sketchbook, bring your notebook, bring your journal, find a chair, a place to sit, and just react to your circumstances, and you are going to be surprised at how it makes you feel.
And you're right, Karen, because look, I want to go back to the shower thing first. But
Okay.
there have been so many times where I jump out of the shower and I'm like, man, I got this great idea. Or yeah, I know how to handle that. And you do address that. So I can see what you're saying definitely in that respect. And then also, now the taking a stroll, that's something that's highly suggested when it comes to people dealing with grief because brain fog is a big issue. And walking, and again, not that timed walk like you talked about. The walk where, you know, you put the leash on your dog and you just go, or you're with your significant other and you're just having one of those conversational walks. The
Mhm.
reality is that the brain fog aspect abates. You're spending more time s- concentrating on the person you're working with, the thing you're working with. And, you know, consequently, the grief is not in control anymore.
Mm.
You see, at one time, we allowed that grief to kind of control our circumstance. It was everything circled around it. But then, like you said before, once you turn around and you make sure that you are in control of the situation, doing things like just a simple walk, you
Mhm.
know, some type of artistic, you know, it's a benefit. there's a we just got a great first off, thank you, MD Opeson, because he sent us a little bit of love, you know, and
Oh,
and it was but the reality is, seriously speaking, when you take that time to get away from all of the things that have been causing you the grief, you start to see the other opportunities. Like you said, the art, I mean, the art therapy, spending time focusing on some type of artistic work, like you said, whether it's actual drawing, whether it's music, or what you did with the young people in Uganda. They were able to actually create a film. These are all artistic aspects. These are all things that we want to be able to take in consideration. I mean, then, like you say, you witness this on more than one occasion. Please also talk about the young lady that was battling stage 4 cancer. When you told me that story, I was like, wow.
yeah. Yeah, this was somebody that was there as an adult bringing her child to my art classes. Well, I always said, "Come on, parents, you do it too. If you're gonna have your child do it, you do it with us because, it's good." I didn't realize even then how good it was for everybody. Well, she just thrived, especially in sculpture, doing a little detailed artwork and working in clay and was loving it, just having a blast doing it with along with her children when she could. Well, when she came to me and said, "Karen, I've just been diagnosed with late stage cancer and I've been given 6 months to live." Well, obviously her family was just reeling from that news. And I know of her talent, and I was preparing for a great big art competition, not just a competition, but an exhibit 8, 9 months from then, and I knew I had thousands and hundreds of pieces to put together. I was doing a whole room called Taste and See Sweet Shop, and everything was gonna be made out of porcelain, and cakes and cupcakes and candies and cookies, the trays, the everything that was displayed. I even saw furniture that people would come in thinking they were entering a chocolate shop. Well, I invited her. I said, "Come help me. You could do it. You could have fun when you're not doing all the medical things you've got to do. Come and join me in the studio." She said, "Karen, I don't know if I'm going to be here in 9 months." I said, "Jan, you'll leave a legacy. Come do it." So she did. When she wasn't doing radiation and chemo and having mastectomy and reconstruction, she was in the studio with me some days for hours as we laughed and problem solved and like what glaze would make dark chocolate, clay color makes milk chocolate, and coming up with these designs, and it was beautiful to behold. And she even helped me find furniture we could refinish to make cafe tables, and got somebody to do these silk table coverings and even a big banner. And sure enough, she was there for the show 9 months later in remission. Matter of fact, she was even scared to say the word remission because it was too hard to believe it was true. But sure enough, as it bore out that whole next year, she was in remission. And now, after 8 years, she can say that she is cancer free. And I know she did the medical things, but there's a lot of people that don't make it that do the medical things. And as I've studied these studies, that when you focus on, like you said, focusing on the grief, letting it control you, then it doesn't go well for your body, because as we think, so we are. And she was thinking about beauty and fun and just this whole presentation, and she was there for the whole show. And it was beautiful and so much fun to see. We got to show it again the next year in another art competition where it did real well too. And she is still here and doing well. And she's convinced that art played a huge place in her healing.
I can see that. And the reason why I brought that up, see, My mother unfortunately passed just recently from stage 4 cancer, and
Oh,
it's like, you know, I have been trying to encourage her to look at alternatives because, again, she was going through chemotherapy and she was going through, and of course, the medication was not making her feel well. And what I was saying was, in addition to everything that you're doing right now, look at these other things. But for her, you know, the biggest thing was it. It she was tired
mhm.
because of the medication and things like that. And but reality is, again, what I'm explaining is that, or what I'm saying is that we have to learn to push past the situation, and art can give us those opportunities to be able to push through the pain and the difficulties because we're doing something we enjoy. You
And
know,
it is fun. That's the goal, is really releasing, the serotonin makes us feel good, the dopamine. These things really, really do affect our emotions and help us be lifted up from the sorrows and the hardships that life preserves. Now, my mother is 92, and she called me when she was visiting my sister recently, and she had been coloring with her great granddaughters. And she said, "Karen, I've heard you talk about this, but to be honest with you, I just always thought of coloring as something for children." She said, "But as I was coloring, I was noticing that I was feeling more relaxed. I wasn't anxious. It was fun." And I said, "Well, Mom, they make adult coloring
don't
books
cover
for a
it with
reason."
time.
It works. It releases the stress hormones. We need cortisol, gives us energy, gives us a little ambition. But we with stress causes our cortisol levels to go way too high, and it affects our body and our energy levels. And so as we do things like this, it only takes 20 minutes, by the way. We're not talking you have to spend hours and hours like I did when you were working on a big show, but you could just do it for 20 minutes. How about, all right, here's another one that's easy for your listeners to do: cooking. Okay, I know a lot of people say, I hate to cook. I don't want to cook. I can't cook. Well, there's recipes. And now we've got the internet, we've got all these shows. There's a reason people love these cooking shows and um, athletic competitions or races, is because we see people being put outside their comfort zones or stretching themselves and having to come up with creative solutions. They're using right brain, left brain, and coming up with brilliant ideas, and the ones with the best ideas win. So they take these chefs, these accomplished trained chefs, they put them in a competition and say, okay, here's the ingredients, or here's the challenge, go, and they time them, and they have to come up with, very original ideas that taste good and look good. Well, we
Right.
don't have to be in a competition. We can just be providing something yummy for ourselves or our families, and follow a recipe or try something new. And all of us have had a situation, I don't have any vanilla, I wonder how almond would taste in it. My family loves almond. We're
And
Norwegian.
put the
Yeah, try
change.
it. Okay, well, I don't have this. How will that work? Or, we're trying something new. And just preparing a meal is a great way to engage in left brain, right brain brilliance. Every time you do that, you're increasing your fun level and your intelligence.
Well, you know what? I'm going to give you a story right now that clearly quantifies exactly what you're saying. When my wife died back in 2016,
Mm.
I did not know how to cook to save my life. One, my wife was an excellent cook, so I didn't have to worry about it. But over time, I was like, we were just eating fast food, eating to the point where my 13-year-old daughter, she said, Daddy, I can't eat fast food anymore. Now, when a 13-year-old kid says, I can't eat fast food anymore, you got to figure something out. And so she was like, Daddy, you got to learn. You got to do something. The first meal we made was tacos. And, tacos, I always say, thank God for Ortega because it made it real easy. You know, But what was interesting was that after I had cooked, it's you're right, that left brain right brain connection. I actually enjoyed it. I cook every night now. I
Woohoo!
I mean since 2016, and I'm not a chef, but I'm a lot better than I used to be, and confident. The point that I'm making in this was that when I was going through the throes of grief, cooking was one of those avenues. I
Mm,
could just put my headphones on and concentrate on what meal I need to prepare.
mhm.
And temporarily, it took that monster of grief away. It put it this way: we have two choices. A lot of us, not a lot of us, though some of us that go through grief, they may take the choice of drinking or whatever, what have you, thinking that that temporary pleasure is going to be long term and it's going to abate the problem. The thing is, when that happens, when you sober up, it gets bigger.
Mm.
Now, when you take the other approach, maybe cooking, maybe drawing, whatever,
Gardening is
you
another one.
gardening, you are actually making the monster of grief smaller because you are building confidence.
Amen.
When you build your self confidence, see, grief hates self confidence.
Mm.
And when you decide to build your self confidence through whatever arena, and a lot of these arenas are things you may not have even thought that you could do.
Yeah.
When you do them, again, it's that so it's a self improvement situation, it's a confidence circumstance, it's
Mm.
all these things. You know, now talk a little bit about your talk about your pop-up podcast again. Before I even get you there, I had a chance to listen to the podcast that you did with Dr. Julian Lockage and talking about the whole growing older thing.
Yeah.
And don't get me wrong, listen, I am I'm 52 and I don't feel like, put it this way, I clearly know that I can't do the same things that I used to do when I was 26. You know, but talk just kind of talk about the pop, especially kind of talk about that the whole growing older, living younger thing.
Well, yeah, I'm 70 years old and I kind of have a little bit of age pride, but I'm just like you. My knees don't have any cortisone, whatever you call it in there, they're creaky, but I have a girlfriend that just talked me into signing up for a line dancing class that starts next month. So I love to dance and yeah, I can't do the hopping and skipping and jumping like I could, but now I can, love to dance. So it'll be fun. We find some way to engage in these things that you used to love and have fun at. And those are absolutely all kinds of ways to be creative, and that's the thing that I talk about in my pop-up podcast. It's called Art as Self-Therapy, Wellness Through Creativity, and I list, and I give more ideas and kind of challenge you, as I talked about some of the things already with taking a walk, and give the science behind it. This marriage dance between art and science, is what it was called. Even Steve Jobs, who everyone knows was the founder of Apple Computer, he said Apple Computer is not just technology, it is a marriage dance between technology and art. He recognized that aesthetics was going to be part of the pleasure of his equipment. I mean, he's creating these computers and now phones and all kinds of things that we have, but he made sure that even the packaging was beautiful. They say that people don't throw away their Apple packaging. Part of it is because they're so slick
But
and designed.
yeah,
They're
I
really
still got I still got my iPhone box, but
I do too.
it's interesting. Let me tell you something. First off, I want to say um, we got a comment from a gentleman, 857 Tucson, and he talked about. He said this is a great topic that we're actually discussing, but I wanted to talk about the whole Steve Jobs thing because it was interesting because I was listening to him talk and he was talking about the fact that he took a course in writing fonts and he discovered that it was interesting and he took those fonts when he discovered Apple. His whole thing was to make sure that like you said, all this creativity, because it was a marriage in his mind. It was a marriage between computer technology and art. And now we're starting to see a lot of that because we see companies like Google, companies like AOL. Oh, not AOL. They actually went by the dinosaur. But company, but companies like um, companies like
Amazon and
Facebook,
yeah, these big
Amazon,
ones. Yeah.
they
Hmm.
what they're doing is they've created a thought process where you can marry the creative side of things with the technology side of things, make it work. Because when you look now, I mean, we are social media is controlling a lot of what we do, influencing a lot of what we do.
Yeah.
Then, I mean, we live in a world now where, thank you, Jeff Bezos, but if we get something and we're upset if we don't get something in 10 hours, where, you know, back in the
Yeah.
day, we would have to wait 7 days, you
Yeah.
know. But again, all this is, it's all talking about the marriage between the creative side of things and the artistic side of things.
I want to talk about AI for a minute. Now, this
Yeah.
is, you think of AI, artificial intelligence, as being very technical. Obviously, it is. And now they have AI art sites and they can create art, perfect art, that operates in all of the parameters of good design and good composition. And yet, when you look at it, it's easy to say, oh, it's perfect, but it lacks something. And that something that it lacks is humanity, is that
Yes.
right brain intuitive, it's that right brain imagination, that right brain inventiveness that is connected to our heart and soul. And I'm a believer. I believe very strongly in God, and I feel that as I develop my right brain and become more sensitive, it's the sensitive part of our brain. It's the part that is aware, that operates in the senses, the five senses, and it's connected to our heart. And so it can't be taken away from us as humans, and it can't be put into AI. AI, think of it as a tool. I love Chat GPT when I'm looking for phrases. I'm looking maybe for some, doing lists of what other ways we can be creative. It's great for that sort of thing. So I just encourage my listeners not to be afraid of AI, but to engage in it, as a tool, and not be thinking that it's going to replace human beings. It will not. It can't, because of our brilliant right brains. Woohoo!
And you know what? It's that is interesting. I was listening to a podcast by a gentleman named Eddie Pinero. It's called Your World Within. And he brought up that exact same thing. What he was saying was that obviously this guy is big on YouTube. And what he was saying was that now he's competing with AI. And
Mm.
he goes, at first, he was a little upset saying, oh man, another way to cheat. And then he said, no, the difference is those that are using AI to do what needs to get done instead of incorporating AI, those people are going to, they may get a flash of a win right here, right then, right there. But over time, they're not going to be able to duplicate that process. He said, those that decide, like you said, take the right brain and marry it with the left brain, and now instead of looking for AI to create the phrase, look for AI to help to make the phrase a little bit better. That's the difference.
Yeah. The other part about the sensitivity, and I want to mention this for your listeners, because our right brain is so sensitive, it's wounded easily. And almost all of us have an experience where somebody told us that some of our creative effort wasn't very good. Either it was a teacher, a parent, a sibling, or a peer that said, "You can't dance," or "You can't sing," or "You're a terrible drawer. That's awful." I've
I've
had
heard
somebody that
that a lot.
kindergarten, she was told her teacher tore up her paper for coloring outside the lines. So in third grade, someone said, "Oh, let's color. Let's spend." I can't color. Can you imagine 3-year-old saying I can't color? And has believed that the rest of her life she couldn't do it. Now, for me, I was told all my life I couldn't sing until I came to the Lord and I could start singing worship songs because He doesn't care if I'm off key or not. And it set me free and gave me confidence. I've actually been in musicals now on stage because I've learned you can learn to sing, you can learn to dance, you can learn to draw. So if someone told you, I can't draw a straight line, well, I have a secret to tell you. When artists need to draw a straight line, we use a ruler. Just like normal people, not all the time, but most of the time. Stick figures is a good place to start, but you can learn if you want to. And that's what I want to encourage everybody. Think about what you loved when you were little. What did you love to do? Okay, so maybe you're not going to be flipping all the time, but what can you do that also you obviously had a great sense of kinetics. You understood where your body was going because that's part of what tumbling. I did some gymnastics in high school, and so I know that tumbling is all about where you are. You have this understanding in your brain that, okay, if I keep tucking like this, my feet are going to go down. If I tuck if I tuck back like this, then my feet are going to go down, or whatever the goal is. There's a certain brain function that you trained and you did for a good part of your life that you could still be operational. I did gymnastics in high school and realized I didn't have the skills to go farther. But in graduate school, I got to take diving, springboard diving. I realized the things that I was strong at, I could do with diving. I would have been better diver than a gymnast, even though I did do well in vaulting. I got junior Olympic quality, but not in the other things. I wasn't limber enough. But anyway, you can find something that touches base with what you loved when you were young. So my pop-up podcast you can access with www.getcreativewithkaren.com. Register for that pop-up podcast. Get some ideas on how you can engage purposefully every day, even just for 20 minutes, to feel better, get that serotonin, dopamine release to encourage you get out of depression, get out of brain fog, find something that's fun to do, and you'll be more brilliant for doing it.
And you know what? You're absolutely right because I, let's go back to the gymnastics. Here's what's crazy. I was more of a street gymnast because no, seriously, where I lived, we everything was we learned on like old dirty mattresses type of thing. We didn't have formal school, formal training. We just learned from learning. But the reality was, like you said, again, it opened up the brain because, and
Mm.
it also brought our levels of fear came down tremendously. I mean, it was almost like we were a little bold doing crazy things. But the reality is, see, the bolder you are in whatever you're doing, whether it's gymnastics, whatever, the more you're willing to take a risk, a calculated risk. That's when you know you're able to look at a side of things that nobody else is seeing. Art, art. The best artists are the ones that, like you said, go way outside the lines. Do something that's just
That's
like right. You look at it, you're like, is that actually art? But then you realize that it is art. It's in his mind, her mind. They brought that out into the world.
yeah.
And you know, I kind of want to tie this back into the whole grief aspect
Yeah.
of things because I realize that a lot of people are not drawn to the arts
Right.
because they're told that again
Yeah.
things like, you know, you need to be medicated, you need to go seek a therapist, you need to seek a
Yeah.
counselor, and there's nothing wrong with that. Don't get me wrong, there are people that really need that, but I think also in addition looking to explore these other avenues
Yeah. Yeah,
is
I'm talking about long-term solutions. This is I'm talking about things that you can do the rest of your life, and I am talking, I'm older and my generation, a lot of them have already raised families, had careers. Now what? Now they're looking maybe what did I used to love? My grandmother, who lived to be 96, loved to knit little slippers for us, little pull-on slippers for us, and she would have yarn in all kind of wild colors. And I admit when we were young, we didn't appreciate them as much as we should have because they became a beautiful legacy she's left all of us because she knitted those and we were all like trading and repairing them as they wore out. Do you still have any moo slippers? And they're just so precious to us. My father, who was a career Marine, when he retired, he wanted to pick up drawing and painting, and I got to teach him and taught him color theory, how I teach painting. And he spent the last 10 years of his life painting. At first, he copied favorites like Van Gogh and Millet and different artists and different paintings. And it's a great student te- um, exercise, by the way, is copying art that you love. And he just started using photography and images that he loved and copying them. Well, they're not paintings that are going to hang in any museum. But do you think that my sister and I would take any kind of money for these paintings that my dad did? He framed them, he gave them to us for presents the last years of his life, and we lost him young, but he left a beautiful artistic legacy that means so much sentimentally to me and my sister. And so you may not ever show your work in a gallery. You may never win competitions for music or singing, but I'm telling you, I have recordings of my sons beatboxing and all kinds of beautiful music they make together just spontaneously. My husband is a Native American flute player and drummer, and when they get together, we have these sessions of music. It's just so fun and exhilarating. And these are memories that you make as a family with things like this. Even coloring, my mother coloring with her great grandchildren. They may not remember much about her. They're still pretty little, but they'll have those little colored pictures that they colored together. So it's beautiful, making meals for your 13-year-old daughter. What a beautiful legacy as she grew up through her teen years, watching her daddy learn to cook for her and for him. And I'm sure she's got that desire in her own life to cook too. Or
that's what you
these
learn.
my husband's a master gardener. He passed that on to her daughter that she loves to make plants grow and feed and see life grow. I wanted to share with you one artist, and I know this is audio, but if there's any visual, this particular artist is a descendant of slaves. His name is Jonathan Green, and you can look him up. He's from the Charleston, South Carolina area. And he grew up in the Gullah culture, which is a combination of Western African and American. And they were given these barrier islands off the coast of Georgia and South Carolina after the Civil War when after the emancipation. And they created a culture that engaged in a lot of their Western African uh, uh, agricultural techniques and art, like using sweet grain, sweet grass to make baskets, like this woven basket in this shot of the hat. If you go to
Okay.
Charleston Marketplace, you can see these artists that have these beautiful things. But these are artworks, paintings, and lithographs from Jonathan Green. Look at the color. Look at the beautiful
Yeah.
celebration of his culture that he took a very awful situation, being descendants of slavery, but he doesn't focus on that grief and that sorrow. He focuses on the beautiful life that he had being raised by families in his culture, and he's made it famous all around the world. He's extremely well known and an incredible artist from the low country of South Carolina. So you can take your grief, you can take your sorrows, you can take the trials and tribulations and make something beautiful out of them.
Well, that's what the premise of the grief empowerment theory is. Oh, and by the way, this is visual. So you did a great job. Thank you. But that's what the grief empowerment theory is about. You have to understand grief is unfortunately going to happen through the course of our lives. But how we choose to grieve will allow us to either be a victim of the grief or to be able to use the grief's negative energy to allow us to catapult to new heights. Like you mentioned, just talking about the gentleman David, who had gone through his situation, he had to figure out a way how to transform the negative situation that he had been through. And he learned to draw with his left hand. You
Yeah, and
know,
he's still doing it. I've got another student who's 77 and was diagnosed with Parkinson's this year, and he had taken up painting and drawing in his retirement after being an engineer, and was doing really well until his right hand didn't work anymore. So
right.
guess what? I've been teaching him to use his left hand to draw and paint. It's the first time he's painted and drawn it in years, and he's loving it and getting out of depression, and he's even starting to use his right hand a little bit. So there's just some miraculous things that happen when we engage in this. When you're talking about grief, I didn't lose my first husband, but he left me at 40 for a 20-year-old, and left me with a 1-year-old and a 3-year-old little boys. So I understand grief, on that level, and it turned me to God. That was my coping mechanism to get healing. And I became an art teacher then, and found a way to utilize, what I'd been doing as an artist to teach others, and found joy in teaching, found joy in another career that helped me support my children, my 2 little boys, until I found in church my second husband. Yeah, and that's been 32 years now. We had 2 children also. So it's been an adventure that, there's life after grief, there's life through grief, there's we all have regrets in life, and nobody's perfect. So life isn't perfect, but I know for me, finding Christ and finding faith has made all the difference. And, I encourage people, if they are in a deep throes of grief, pity parties are lonely. I found that out. Nobody wants to come to your pity party.
Absolutely. Look, the party of one is hard. But listen, Karen, I just wanted to say thank you. We're coming to the end of our show, and I wanted to really say thank you so much for your insights because, again, art therapy is really beneficial to people that are learning how to manage through the grief process. It's difficult. And since grief, there are so many different forms of grief. Art kind of covers so many of the aspects we talked about, whether it's sports, whether it's singing, whether it's dancing, whether it's actual drawing. There are so many different avenues, and those avenues make a person may gravitate to that particular avenue.
Mhm.
You know, but again, I just want to say thank you so much for
My
your
pleasure.
time. You know,
Oh.
do me a favor. Let me ask you, what are some of the things that you're doing coming forward, and what are how can we get in touch with you too? I know I have your website, which is I'm putting it on, but please.
That's my pop-up podcast, but I also have a website www.karendeloachart.com. I have a free little booklet if people want to get that. Also, I just want to encourage your listeners to get, if they get anything out of here, it's to know that we are all creatives. We were born that way. So you can't have any excuse. I can't draw, I can't paint. Or maybe you don't want to, but maybe you do. So find it. And I'd love to talk to you and just have a session, book a call. We'll talk about your creativity or your thoughts about how you can engage in the arts to help you emotionally, mentally, and physically get more healing and restoration.
Okay. Well, Karen, thank you so much. I truly appreciate it. And you know what? I've learned so much today. So
I
thank
appreciate
you,
you doing research. That touches me too, that
so,
you did research beforehand. So
ladies
thank
and
you.
gentlemen. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you all for coming to another episode of the Grief Empowerment Theory. And understand that you can transform your grief and turn it into a gift.